It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andi Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and today I have three very special guests. You might notice that I did not announce Andi as my co-host today, because while he's still a co-host today, he's technically part of the guest setup, and I'm sure he'll still be asking all the questions anyway, as he always does, because today, we're here to talk about a fantastic book that Andi and Max and Hilliary, who we'll be introducing soon, just wrote. And, they didn't just write it like this morning, but, a while ago, spent a lot of time on it. And as you can tell, I do a great job introducing people. So without further ado, Andi, how are you doing today, Mr. Guest and co-host, Two Hat Man?
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for having us today. I know you are the superstar podcaster, as you just told us. And congratulations to your tickets that you
thank you.
Tickets. Yeah. Which
Neil
show
Young.
are you going to see?
Yes, Neil Young.
Neil Young. So congratulations. You proved to the system that you tried to get into, that you're not a robot.
Oh my gosh,
you're actually a human. Yeah.
Terrible, terrible.
Did you actually read our book? Because I remember back in November, I gave you a copy.
I skimmed through some pieces and I was reading some of the other bits. It's quite in depth, and I'll just stop making excuses.
You cannot talk yourself out of this.
But I did. You know what? It's hard because I did have a goal. Like last week, I was waiting for my daughter. She was in some tutoring thing, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have time to read the whole book, but let me at least read the summaries of each chapter. Because I'm like, that's probably what all these talk show hosts do at night, right? Someone reads a summary and like, oh yeah, I read the book. And time got away from me. Plus, it's kind of really hard living in the United States right now, and there's a lot of distractions. And so I think I'm going to chalk it up to a little bit of laziness, some forgetfulness, but also a little bit of like I just needed to spend free time not thinking. And but I did look at some of it. I was reading. I read the first chapter, and I'm really actually interested in. And I'm sure we'll cover it later, but I do, Andi, my obsession with platform engineering has been Cloud Foundry, right? Because as we've developed and talked about, as it moved from Kubernetes and then more optional guardrails to Kubernetes and then platform engineering, I'm like, this all sounds very familiar, like we've been down this road before. And there was an interesting piece in there. And maybe we talk about it, we have to introduce people. But I want to just set it up now. There was a really interesting piece about adding another abstraction layer, which is, again, what Cloud Foundry was doing. But then there was also some talk about opinionated versus not opinionated and all that, which always, again, this is going back in time. So I am interested in diving into that part of it for sure. But I'm sure you have a lot you want to talk about with our guests, which maybe you should introduce now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the first chapter was actually written by the person that actually came up with the idea and then pulled Hilliary and myself in, Max. Max, quickly, maybe a quick round of introduction before we then also let Hilliary say who she is. But Max, you first.
For sure. Hi, I'm Max. I'm the founder and managing director of Liquid Reply. And as Andi said already, I came up with the beautiful idea for writing the book. It's a little bit older, the idea, but we'll cover that a little bit later. Doing platform engineering, technical advisory for all kinds of customers in the end. And so it's a little bit like the summary of what we have seen in the last years and the thoughts which we put together and all this good stuff. And yeah, beside that, doing all kind of open source thingies, being part of the CNCF ambassador program, being part of the Linux Foundation Europe Advisory Board. And yeah, slowly fading out of the more technical part and getting more and more traction and piece of paper and writing stuff and putting thoughts on, wherever we can put black ink.
Hey, and Max, you are also leading the Cloud Native Munich chapter. You host
Exactly.
Cloud Native Munich I think it's in July. correct?
July 21st and 22nd. It's the first time that we have the now called Cloud Native Summit. Formerly was at KZD. And yeah, very excited about that one. Also very hot planning phase right now, looking for more speaker, more sponsor to get the baby up and running.
Yeah, so folks, if you listen to this and you are in the central DACH region, so Munich surroundings, and you would like to present at the Cloud Native Summit in Munich, CFPs are open and also sponsorships are open. Which now brings me to the best guest in the end, especially with the best background, the best setup, I think, that we ever had in our podcast. Hilliary, hi. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. Well, thank you for having me back, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to see you again.
Oh, yes. So good to see you again, Brian. It's like it was yesterday. So I am Hilliary, as Andy said. I am a senior principal site reliability engineer at RedHat. And I also co-host the RedHat live stream GitOps Guide to the Galaxy. Where we get to be professional nerds and learn things professionally. It's my joy. And you know, when Andy reached out to me and said, "Hey, my colleague Max is talking about this book. We think that your skill set would make a good addition to our author group. Are you interested?" I was like, "Yes, please. Okay, thanks. Bye." Could not have been more honored or more delighted to have been invited on. And it was, I thought, a really great meeting of the minds. As Brian, like you mentioned, like platform engineering, haven't we done this before? Haven't we been here before? Right. And I think Andy, Max, and I kind of all discussed that during our planning phase that we had in Paris at KubeCon there. And so, yeah, we definitely do reference it in the book. Like this seems like familiar waters a little bit. And it's definitely some stuff that I spent time on in past roles, and it's things that I spend time on in current role.
And for reference, in case people want to go back in history sounds a little long, but back in our podcast history, it was the episode that aired on May 16, 2022. And the episode, Hilliary, with you was called Why SREs Are Not Your New Sysadmins. You talked a lot about the work that you do as an SRE at Red Hat, a lot of great lessons learned. Folks, and also maybe Brian, for you and myself, sometimes a good reminder of which episodes we have already done over the many, many years.
Yeah. I just want to comment really quickly, Hilliary, on something you said about like, oh, is this, new ground, or have we been here before? And I think we see that a lot in tech, where new ideas come out and the world's not ready for them. Right. And then what happens is, as we've seen with platform engineering, they incubate. And when they reemerge, kind of like we'll call platform engineering the cicadas of the world, right? When they reemerge 17 years later, it's ready for prime time, right? And the market's ready for it, and technologists are ready for it. And this is when it can really make a splash. And that's what I think we're seeing at this time. So I think, although, yeah, people who are listening to this are going to think, this sounds familiar. Yeah, it does. But it's been fully thought out and really refined, and it's ready for, and we see a lot of people already doing this stuff, right? It's not like, oh, only the unicorns are doing this now. It's getting everywhere. So.
And maybe that's actually a good way to promote a couple of things that the three of us will be doing in about 2 weeks after this airs. So whoever is going to go to London, KubeCon is coming up. There will be some book signings again at the Cube Crawl, I think it's called, on Wednesday evening, I believe. So find us at the Dynatrace booth. Thanks, Dynatrace, for sponsoring a couple of books. We will make sure to prepare our hands in writing, because we will sign the books. But more exciting is on the Platform Engineering Day, which is on Tuesday at the co-located events. Both Hilliary and Max, you're going to talk about the book and lessons learned. And maybe that's a good way to actually pitch a little bit on why the book was written and what people are going to hear when they come to KubeCon in your session.
And did you say the name of the book yet? Did you say the name of the book yet?
The name of the book? Well, it's in the picture. Well, maybe Max will do us a favor.
Absolutely. So, well, initially it was not the idea to call it platform engineering for architects. It was a beautiful subtitle, Crafting Modern Platforms as a Product. It was more generic because there was no big, I would say, target group in it defined. It was more like a collection of thoughts. And the first thoughts about writing about the book was like 2.5 years old or 3 years old. Meanwhile, still in German, written somewhere in my Google Drive in a very long, abandoned document. But at that time, it didn't felt right to write about it because there was not that much content, not that much experience. There was just like a Spotify talking about their thoughts and ideas and coming up with tools like Backstage. But the wording platform engineering just gave a greater meaning to all the Kubernetes people who were tired of calling themselves like, what I'm doing here with Kubernetes. I'm not the Kubernetes engineer. I do a lot of other stuff. And that's the same way how for me this topic emerged, because my team did in the past a lot of Kubernetes, and we were always like the Kubernetes people, but we did more than Kubernetes. It's all about automation. It's about observability. It's about bringing people together, understanding what developers need and help them to get on the platform and use it. But we never have a name for it, or we never found a name for it until at some point in time, platform engineering become a thing. And at this point, I mean, it's like 3 years ago, it didn't felt mature enough to really give some deeper meaning about it. And that has changed. That has changed over the time. And we saw already a good amount of talks, a good amount of other books, blog posts around how to implement platforms, how to do the automation, how everything comes together. And while we're working on the book and try to shape a little bit more the content, we came up with like, hey, it should be a little bit more timeless. So the book is still good to take into your hand in 2, 3, 4 years. And maybe there are a few technical snippets in it that might be outdated, but the majority of the book is still readable and it's not that much outdated. And I think that was like the underlying tone which we want to give to the book, that this is really like going through the time and can follow along with people. And while a lot of jobs and technologies are changing, for example, there's one role which always needs to be around it and adapted, but also use more methodologies rather than just the pure technology. And that's the architect. So that's how we slowly wrap it up and come to the point of writing a book, Platform Engineering for Architects. Meanwhile, I got feedback, we should delete that. It could be also platform engineering for CIOs, and I hire IT management and VPs and SVPs. But I mean, we can just change the title and reprint it a couple of times for different roles. It's also not a problem.
Yeah, it's cool that we got all this feedback, and also thanks. I think we should also thank Pact, our publisher, for also making this possible. Right,
and all our reviewers. Right?
And the reviewers, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, the reviewers have been really awesome. I mean, during the writing process, right, we had the people who are credited in the book as volunteering as technical reviewers, specifically like getting early drafts. And those people were great, and they gave some really good constructive feedback. They caught little mistakes, that definitely helped. And then, the people who have since, not only read the book, but taken the time to leave us a review and tell us, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they'd want to see in the next go round. It really is very meaningful for people to take the time and let us know, like what they thought and what they valued. It really is kind of makes it worth it.
Hey, Hilliary, I remember in the early days of the book, in the early days, again, such a strange thing to say, it's not.
Yeah.
But when we were sitting down, we said, wow, how can we write so much content? But then you were the one that said, damn, I need so much more, so many more pages too, because I have so many thoughts that I have on the topic. I think you were specifically bringing in your all of that, the focus on security, right? That was a big topic for you. And I guess you could probably write a whole book on that alone.
Yeah, chapter 7 was a struggle. So initially we were not going to have cybersecurity like beyond like a little hand wave towards it because it really is its own many books worth of topics. Um, and Pact was like, you guys have to have security in here. And we're like, okay. And I really struggled with that because, you know, there was kind of a page target that we needed to hit. And it was like, okay, that's too many pages for a hand wave and too few pages for a deep dive because this is a really vast space. And so I ended up approaching it from what is the primer I wish I had had coming into my role, right? What is the collection of information that would have made my life a little bit easier? And so that was what I did. And I forget how many pages that chapter ended up being, but the outline by itself was half the page count. That outline was gargantuan. And I was like, still like trimming it down and tightening up thoughts. I was still really worried that I was going to go way over or that it was going to be too dry to get through. Like it was going to put people to sleep. That one was very challenging. I spent the most time writing that chapter because it was very challenging to even approach it.
Mm-hmm. I also think there was one important piece in the very beginning, and I think we got some good feedback on that as well. While platform engineering is obviously the topic that a lot of people talk about, not everybody must build a platform. And I think, Max, this was also something that you had in your early chapters, right?
Yep.
Like really making the decision, do we need to build our own platform, yes or no? And could you maybe talk a little bit about this? Because I think essentially this decision in the very beginning is very critical to not walk down the wrong path.
Absolutely. I mean, the thoughts around this comes already from even one step further where you can discuss, is Kubernetes the right way? So in the book, we focus on the Kubernetes part, but platforms doesn't need to be built on Kubernetes, yet the most cloud native platforms. So we also need to be careful. Nowadays, everything is a platform. But if we talk about a cloud native platform, that is often built on Kubernetes. And I haven't seen so much other things nowadays out there. In former times, maybe yes. But from there, we come to the point that, hey, maybe not the platform, maybe the platform itself is not always the right way to spend your time, your effort, bring a team to the point to understand how it needs to be done. And that can have various reasons. Sometimes from like, hey, we are, for example, a young startup and we just want to get a product out there and we have a really, really hard time and budget cut. So maybe I don't need to spend now time for that. Or if you're a large enterprise and you're heavily fragmented in different IT areas that absolutely do not want to speak with each other, and I think that's more common than it should be, then it also doesn't make sense to maybe spend that much time at that point into building a platform that actually should bring together all the departments. Except, again, it's maybe part of your strategy, right? You want to unify the approach. You want to unify how you would like to provide infrastructure to different teams, increase transparency, visibility, stuff like that. Then it's maybe a good thing to start with. But overall, and we have covered a couple of pages in that, we really should ask tons of questions before we go into this direction to build a platform.
Mm-hmm. I also had, I remember in the early days when we were sitting, I think Hilliary, you mentioned we started the whole thing at KubeCon in Paris about a year ago. I think it was March. And it's amazing what has happened in a year. But we sat down and we talked about when we are building platforms, we want to first understand what is the real thing that what's the real problem that the platform should solve, right? So should the platform make it easier for engineers to configure certain environments, to stand up new environments, to create new artifacts, to create new software that gets deployed, that gets automatically security checked. So we try to really figure out what is the thing that the platform should do, and also instead of boiling the ocean, trying to figure out when you start what is also the thinnest viable platform. And with this, we borrowed a little bit the concept of the MVP, the minimal viable product. For me, it was a big eye-opener that we talked a lot about basic product management ideas and principles, right? Because in the end, we are building an internal platform, which is basically just a software product to end users. And most of these end users, they will be internal, but in the end, we're building certain features. And in order to build the features, we need to figure out what features do our end users need in order to solve their problems. And so first, we need to understand which problems we actually need to solve. And I thought that was a really interesting thought experiment. And I guess this also is why we also had the subline, the sub-tagline of the book, Crafting Modern Platforms as a Product, because in the end, we're building a product, or at least we encourage people to think about platform engineering as a product. Yeah.
Yeah, and bring this the awareness that the platform needs to serve a kind of purpose. So if there is no purpose for a platform, obviously it doesn't make sense to spend time on it. But it's not only about time, because I always like to say, if you build a platform like a project, then it's already dead at the point you hit the deadline of the project. But if you build a platform and you change the mindset of the team, you change the perspective of the team members, that they are working on a product that is sustainable in a way it sustains itself over a longer time period, and it's not vanish, or management will not take away people and budget after a certain amount of time, then this platform is a very good ground base to, well, keep evolving and keep being modernized. But I think what's also important is that you do not like overload it with features, right? I think that's a very typical behavior if you have a product that at some point in time you're like feature rich, and then it's like, okay, what we do now, we build 10 more features because the improvement itself is maybe not the thing which we want to target right now. So find the right balance in productizing the platform is very critical, I think, on the way down to matured in an organization.
Yeah, and I think on that, when we discuss, part of that is meeting your users where they are. If I think I gave the example of, like, if you integrate a pipeline technology and people are not adopting it because everything they're already needing is handled for them by GitHub workflows, then it's time to ditch the pipeline from the product, and instead of trying to force people to migrate, make that integrate with what the rest of the product does, or the rest of the platform does. Product, same thing here, right? So that meeting folks where they are was I think really one of the things that we wanted to make clear, because it enables them to do things like self-service aspects of the platform. It enables them to have just less mental overload. It's one less thing, one less barrier between them and the adoption of the platform. And I think that was what I think we kind of had the entire chapter 6 on that, right? That was really about that. But we talked about it in a few places, because it's really key that a platform is built in service of the users. It's not seeking the shiniest thing, not seeking to emulate some perfect model that you heard about at some other company. It needs to be for the people who actually have to use it.
It's a really interesting point. I was just going to say, because even in whenever learning about different ideas in tech industry, right? Even if we go back to the idea of DevOps, and then they had the Toyota factory model and all that. It's always astounding to hear about how these things are brought up around the idea of something in tech, but how well suited they are for so many other areas, right? And this point you made, I think, is just an excellent point. No matter what you're doing, I manage a team, and there's all this paperwork and stuff around the team that they have to do, and I really love this idea, whether or not it's a platform, whether it's for anything, of getting rid of the stuff that doesn't service the immediate goal, and also removing the barriers if it's something people don't want to use don't find useful, like cut it out. It's almost like you're getting rid of technical debt in your platform to make the platform successful. And I think constant looking, going back frequently and looking for those warnings is very important. But it's just
so you read chapter 9 then?
Yes. No, it's interesting. I was just flipping through here, and it is really interesting, for people who obviously don't have the book yet, because they, first edition sold out, and now you're working on like the gold-plated second edition, and now didn't they launch this into space for other civilizations to find? But the book really is, yes, at the beginning it starts talking about concepts, but the book really is a blueprint for how to execute this and how to do this. It's not just a book talking about the benefits of platform engineering. And you could just, someone stupid like me who's just glancing at the chapter titles, it's really heavy. It's really, really, really in depth on that side. So anyway, I sidetracked a little bit, but I did want to call out like how I think that is a really, really fascinating point, just for everything in general, but especially for this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think I have to pick up my own book. I wrote chapter 9. You would think I would have it like cold. I don't.
You called it Choosing Technical Debt to Unbreak Platforms. And I wanted to actually make sure that you can talk about this, because this was a very big point for you that you wanted to make, talking about the technical debt. Chapter 9. Hilliary.
Yeah, chapter 9. I will say that Max came up with the title on this one. Yeah, read through the whole thing. It's actually not that long of a chapter. So I actually just kind of had, I quoted myself, right? Because my sign off on my own podcast is choose your tech debt wisely, right? That's what I always tell people, choose your tech debt wisely. I just kind of give you like a little bit of like what I do when I'm assessing technical debt, right? And it's just a couple questions, right? What are you solving today? What problems do you not have yet? What will this cost us in time to build or adopt? What will this cost us to run? What is necessary to maintain it? And what is our expected return? There's actually 11 questions. Can the team sustain it as is? And that's really big, because sometimes that answer is no, but they may be prepared to upskill and they may have the time to upskill, right? That might be acceptable. And, if part of that, sustaining it as is this a piece of open source software? What does the community look like around that? Is it active? How does the team join that community, right? There's a couple aspects to as is that need to be taken into account. Like what will it take for new team members to get up to speed? When will we know if it's time to scale? How will we scale? What are our deprecation criteria for this solution? And that last one is big, because you do need to know when it's time to move on. Nothing's permanent in tech. So knowing what your deprecation criteria is, I think goes really hand in hand with understanding what your technical debt is. I've heard people say that technical debt is from making the wrong decision. But I challenge that in this chapter, because it's from making any decision, because nothing is perfect. It's the 80-20 rule. You're gonna maybe sacrifice that last 20% to get 80% of what you need. There's always going to be some trade-off to what you've picked. And you're always going to have things like critical vulnerabilities that need to be patched. And there's a regular maintenance that needs to be done. So I challenge the notion that tech debt comes from choosing the wrong thing or what is the wrong thing in retrospect. Tech debt is a little bit of just the cost of doing business. So making it sustainable, it requires, it's like part of the software development lifecycle, right? You continually need to evaluate, like take the data, make a decision.
Talking about, because you just mentioned the word, make it sustainable, sustainability, cost. Max, chapter 8, I think, is something very dear to your heart.
The master of transitions at work.
Yeah,
that actually is a really great chapter.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, if you unify the way how you manage your infrastructure and the way how you manage applications and the deployment around the globe or in your region or wherever, it brings the huge potential to also take care more efficiently about your costs itself, because the usual landscape for enterprises is, again, very fragmented, very out of control. Hundreds, if not thousands, of products owners and 10x more developers and whatsoever. But the thing is, like, you very easily fall into this narrative telling, like, oh, it's their fault that we run out of the costs and that we are not transparent about the costs. But no, it's just like usually you have like a history in growing your environments and it gets costly over time. And also looking there again to a lot of enterprises, they are not there yet to really, really manage well their cloud infrastructure. So it's no wonder that you run out of costs. And I mean, in this chapter, the idea is very, very simple, just to give a few little tools on hand to early start thinking about the cost perspective. And for example, with a simple tagging strategy, just prepare a little bit the future adjustments which you can bring to your platform, to your environments. And I recently talked with someone about the book who also has read this chapter, and he practically says, like, well, I would love to just cut out this chapter and give it to my IT management. And they just should have a look on it and maybe find a little bit more time, budget, and money to bring it to the rest of the organization. It doesn't make sense if only the platform engineering team is doing it. It's nothing magical, nothing very crazy written into it, but it just gives a perspective like, hey, we can fine-tune a lot of the environment if we are aware and transparent about what's going on in the environments and the platforms, if we are very precise what we expect there, like in the perspective of availability and stuff like that. But it's also sometimes very important to challenge, like, how high available do you would like to have it, right? Sometimes maybe just a copy of a database is enough. You don't need 5 read replicas distributed in 10 different countries and continents and whatsoever. Just because someone said we need it highly available, we might need to challenge that or can achieve it in different ways. So also looking as an architect, for example, about changing also the architecture, which can have also cost impact in the end.
We also discussed this during the writing process. And I think it came out more in the security chapter than the others, but challenging what data you're even storing, not both from a security aspect, but also from a cost aspect. Why are we storing this? What is the value of storing this? What is the value of storing it for, the duration that we're storing it for? Why, kind of like really questioning, that as an example, but really any piece, like everything should be challenged at some point. But if you have just a ton of data being stored and you have no idea how to use it or what the use case is for it, you shouldn't have it. It's a liability. It's either a security liability or an expense liability or both. But that is a very easy thing. Is like, do I really have only the data that I actually need and can use? And if, the answer to that is no, then that's an opportunity to save on cost, and it reduces your surface, like your surface area for risk too. So, but yeah, and that was one of the things that we discussed. That kind of was an idea that fit both. Is really, why do we have the thing? Whether that thing is something you store, whether that thing is something you run, why do we have the thing? Is a question you can always ask. And that's actually also why we put in to have ADRs, right? Architecture design records. Or reviews. I hear it both ways, by the way. So for our situation, we just went with records because that documents the why. And sometimes the why doesn't exist anymore, which means it's an okay thing to change.
Yeah, I think it's I was just having a funny thought when you're talking about getting rid of all the stuff you don't need, right? Have any of you ever tried going into your whatever email, non-work email you use, and just selecting a whole ton of your emails that you've been holding on to for forever long and just hitting delete, right?
Yep.
There's this intrinsic, and it's I've done it, 1 or 2 times maybe, and it's always scary because I'm like, I was saving that for something in case something. It's like, no, I don't need it. So all I would say is, if you're scared about letting data go first to your Gmail account, Yahoo, whatever you're using, and select like 90% of your inbox and hit delete and see if anything bad
It's
happens.
very freeing when you do it. It's
but
very
it's also
freeing.
like nothing happened. Like, oh, okay. Yeah.
The world is not ending if you get rid of that. No.
That receipt from 10 years ago.
This also circles back to what we said earlier, letting go of things. When you build a platform and you're building capabilities into the platform, you want to make sure that you only keep those things that are actually delivering value. And I think, Max, you had, we also talked, I think it was in chapter 2, I have it here in front of me. We talked about relevant KPIs to actually monitor the adoption of a platform, because in the end, if your organization makes a strategic investment in letting a team build an internal platform, then you want to obviously make sure that you are investing this money and time wisely, and that you can also prove, that you have an impact, but it also means you need to get rid of things that don't have an impact. I think that was also, we covered this with KPIs and observing the platform and making it successful.
Yeah. Yeah, and also you have two different perspectives. So you can measure the acceptance of a platform and how efficient it become if you use every famous DORA metrics and see how deployments become more faster, more reliable, whatsoever. But more important, I believe, is the KPIs that are around it. Like that you have difficulties even maybe to measure, and where you have to come freely up with it, because it also depends on different organizations. There's a couple of examples out there where I think on the one hand side you have Spotify, then you have Expedia and Toyota, which all talk about their success stories about the adoption of platforms and internal development platforms. And the very interesting part is, one company focused entirely on the perspective of like, we deliver faster software, the quality has increased, and more people are committing to something. While the next company is completely just about money and is like, hey, we saved 5 million here and we saved 250,000 there. And the last company is more like, suddenly all of our developers frequently use the documentation and access it. And by the way, our quality of software that's delivered has also increased. So I think that's what we also try to put into that chapter, to say like, look, there's a couple of standard frameworks around KPIs, but there's also that you have to define what makes sense for you. Not everything of it makes directly sense for your organization. Maybe you are already very cost efficient because you have some cost management. Maybe you have a team that is very aware of it, but you look into, for example, code quality, or that your documentation was in the past more horrible and now you would like to improve it. And maybe platform can assist in this direction.
Yeah. We also talked about different types of personas of people who would utilize a platform, including non-technical personas, right? Yeah. Lots of people use Git for their docs. And so you have docs writers who are doing everything in Markdown. Right. And so you can have them as users as a platform, which means that they would have different KPIs, right? Different standard of what is successful with it and what is a good interaction. And they would have a different use case. They would have a different golden path, right? They're not going to hit as much of the platform or care about as much of the platform as, maybe somebody else, like an application engineer would, right? So we talked a little about that. I don't remember if we talked about like the way a platform can provide visibility into like the goings on in a way that like people like product managers and so forth can track. I think it was something we kind of discussed when we were talking about writing. I don't remember that making it into the book. But transparency is another type of thing that a platform can add. Like, where is this release? Well, you can actually follow it through the platform, right? Yeah. So when Max is like, KPIs need to be about your company, it just needs to be about like the who, right? Is it only one type of person, or is it a couple different types of people?
Yeah, we actually talked about that. The end-to-end traceability of artifacts through the lifecycle. We call it the SDLC observability. This is the whole chapter around where we introduced continuous integration delivery, where we talked about GitOps.
Talked about we IDPs. Did put it in. Yeah, good job, us.
And,
well done.
Yeah. And then one thing that I think was also a good decision in the end, in chapter 3, in the very beginning, we introduce our fictitious company. So we came up with a company where we explained what this company is, who they are, where they came from, and what they want to achieve. And we always try to relate everything we then explained in the book back to that company, because most readers will probably be in an existing environment. They have to deal with an existing situation. And therefore, we try to give them a reference point on what would, in our case, it was called Financial One Acme, right? What would they do? Because they have a certain legacy, they have a certain existing processes, they have certain roles in their organization. How would a platform benefit them? Yeah.
Yeah, that one was really important for me to keep my chapters on track. I was like, what am I grounding this to? And that I ended up kind of coming up with it to help me with chapter 6, which was the first one completed, ironically. So I had no idea writing chapter 6 what the first 5 chapters were going to be. And so that was something that I did for me. And then we decided to incorporate it into the book.
Yeah, chapter 1 to 5 appear out of magic dust.
Hey, Andy, what chapter did you write?
Which chapters did I write? That's a good question. I believe
I
wrote
figured you only got to write one. I figured they were like, let's just let Andy
I think
write one.
they allowed me to write 2. I think it was chapter 3 and it was chapter 5, and I helped a little bit in two other chapters. Yeah.
You helped in one of mine too. You went and added the cross-plane example.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
one of the chapters. I think it might have been chapter 6.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was 7. One of those has a cross-plane example about only deploying apps to North America. I don't remember which one, but Andy went and added the technical example there. And there was a few other places. Andy had his hand all over the place. He was our consultant.
Yeah, of course. No, Andy was. I bet you. Can I make a wild guess and wonder if Andy wrote all the summaries for every chapter? Because Andy, if you all haven't noticed, Andy's a great summarizer, at least on the podcast.
He did not.
Nope. We couldn't rely on this skill. Next book.
If I had known, I would have made him write all of my summaries for me. You told me too late.
Hey, Andy, I had an odd question here.
Go ahead.
And we just had a feline join the podcast.
Oh yeah, you guys can't see her.
Yeah, that was last time too. I think.
You guys
by
can see her.
By the way, I looked up the
can't.
picture. I looked up the picture from the old one, and you had Rogue One in the background, and I totally remember that bit. I remember a conversation about Rogue One.
Oh, that's right. I did have the big Rogue One poster hanging out here at that
covers
time.
Me. Andy, and I, it's been a while since we talked about Captain, right? And I know Captain had quite a few things it was trying to do. But for our listeners who may have been back around, still with us, who every time you'd say Captain, we had to take a drink. Was Captain basically a platform, or was it less than a platform? Was a little bit. I mean, or at least the goal of it.
Yeah. No, Captain brought in a couple of capabilities that you needed in a platform like this. And by the way, we obviously have Captain on page 69, 125, 184, 189,
Is
and
Captain still alive?
301.
Because you haven't mentioned it in a long time.
Of course, is Captain still alive.
Okay, you haven't mentioned it in a long time, so.
Yeah,
right.
no. But no, Captain provides some of these, what Hilliary mentioned earlier, these observability aspects of artifacts that are being pushed through a platform, right? Captain was providing observability into deployments on Kubernetes, and then we also had the quality gating with SLOs. So these are some of the aspects that we also explain in the book. And we bring in some of the CNCF projects. Hilliary mentioned Crossplane earlier. So we talk about Crossplane, we talk about Captain, we talk about Backstage, we talk about Argo. We really try to talk, I think, and bring in projects especially in the scenes from the CNCF community that we see a lot out there being used in platforms that are built right now.
So it's important, I think. Sorry, so to get my point out, it's important that people understand too. There's not a engineering platform that you go buy and download and use, right? It's an amalgamation of different components that build the whole. But I think that's obvious from what you're saying. Hilliary, you were going to say something there. I didn't want to lose that thought.
Yeah, and it actually follows your thought very well, because we tried to be non-prescriptive. So when we brought in these CNCF technologies, we used them as examples, but we may have mentioned multiple of a similar type throughout the book. And that was a very intentional choice of being non-prescriptive about how you solve X problem or which tool you use to solve Y problem. There goes my cat being annoying. Anyway, there was a deliberate decision to be non-prescriptive about what the tooling looked like, because it was an attempt to be timeless, and that was really important. So we mentioned a lot, and we mentioned some that do similar things, all to show you, kind of showcase the options versus tell you what to do.
Right.
And it follows the theme, right? It's like we have talked about a lot of perspectives and how you do also some tool choices, how you find out which tool might be the right one for you and which is maybe the wrong one, how you can draft your architectural landscape, starting by having a kind of capability map, what I would like to have that my platform is doing. And this actually then comes again from like, what was the purpose of the platform? So it all is connected and goes from chapter to chapter to tell a little bit its story and connects the different loose ends.
So I think the important thing to learn here is that for the people who go out and say we're going to build everything on serverless because we want it all on serverless, and we know that's never a good thing to do, don't just pick tools like we've been saying over and over again. If you're going to be building a platform, as you all are hinting at here, look into the different tools that you can plug into the platform to make sure it's going to fit what your outcome is that you want to be. Don't just grab what's there. Understand what you're going to pick, because otherwise you're going to make the mistakes that we see countless people who say, I'm going to take my monolithic applications and lift them, shift them to Kubernetes as is. Like, what are you doing? Right? It's not going to work. So I could just beg people, please look into what these things do and what the pros and cons of each are before you use them. Because that's one of my pet peeves. We come across people like, yeah, we just want to be all serverless. Okay, why? Because it's cool. Okay.
We don't want to bash on
admins.
Yeah, but we don't want to bash on serverless because
no, I'm not bashing on serverless. It's the reason serverless has very good use cases. Right,
exactly.
Everything
that's
has
also
great use cases.
That's also what Max, you said earlier, right? The book is heavily focused on CNCF and Kubernetes as a core platform. All the concepts we explain, they can be applied independently of the technology. You just need to pick the technology that makes sense for you, for the use cases, and also for the technical skills you have in the organization. That's important. Good. I would say KubeCon, coming back and reminding people if they come to London for KubeCon. Tuesday is your talk around platform engineering for architects. Max,
who are you pointing
Hilliary,
to?
do you remember?
Oh, Max.
What's the time? I think it's in the afternoon, early afternoon, if I'm not mistaken.
Super bad about timing.
Yeah, we'll add the link to the description of the podcast. So, folks, if you happen to be in London, Platform Engineering Day, that's a co-located event on Tuesday. A great way to either give feedback in case you have read the book already, if you want to learn more. We're all going to be there, but Hilliary and Max will be on stage. And Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening at Cube Crawl, this is where the expo area is open, and I think there's like 2 hours of time in the expo. We will all be at the Dynatrace booth to hand out books and sign books. And there might be even more book handouts, if I'm not mistaken, Max, potentially, right?
We are working on it.
We're working on it, yeah.
Looks like there's a couple of opportunities to get some signed books, maybe already on Tuesday, maybe some on Thursday.
Yeah.
So practically all the time when you meet us, we will throw a book at you.
Very important distinction there. Throw a book at you, not the book at you.
No, I would never throw a baby.
Yeah.
Do we have a book cannon to shoot the books at people? Imagine that. We're going to send use a book cannon for the Oxford English Dictionary. I think that's like this big or something. Right? It's a soft cover though, so it's okay. It doesn't leave bruises.
I really want to say thank you now, though, Max, for giving, I think, both of us the opportunity to help you with this book? I know it was a big dream from you for a very long time. I know your story when you, I think, were still a kid and in school, and teachers were telling you that you will never be able to write a book. But then years later, you are now a book author. And I'm very happy to be part of the journey.
That was my revenge. I still didn't find out the address of my past teacher. Maybe I just will send a couple of books to the book library. Also, I'm not sure what all the teenagers should do with this book, but maybe I can convince someone to join IT.
Yeah.
I mean, I was telling my cousin who is in a related field, but not most of the book doesn't apply to him. I told him, I said, honestly, just read chapter 7. Yeah, chapter 7 is pretty much good information for literally anybody. Kind of regardless of what you actually do as a job. A lot of the information there is pretty useful in a general sense.
It's a life coaching chapter.
It really is a life coaching chapter, yeah.
I think congrats to all of you, right? I mean, writing a book in general and getting thoughts, especially deep technical thoughts, out in a consumable way is hard to do in the first place. But I imagine you all did this while still working your other jobs. So a lot of your free time, spare time, going back and forth, revisions and editing. I have this idea of some sort of, vampire story I want to write that I can't even create a story from it yet. I have a bunch of ideas, but even the idea of trying to even write that, even thinking about writing it is just daunting, right? And I probably never will do it, but you all did it, and you should really be proud of what you accomplished here. And especially, one of the themes we've seen in the IT world since forever is the idea of giving back to the community and sharing what we've learned, sharing ideas. And the three of you contributed to that in a major way, especially on this really important topic that's coming up more and more. So just real, round of applause to you all, and you should be really proud of what you've done there.
Thank you very much. But it just makes fun if you have two fantastic co-authors. And then it goes very smooth. I mean, the writing process was actually quite fast. But the writing process, I think, went very smooth. The thing is, when you're three authors, is like everyone start their first chapter, and then suddenly you have 120 pages or so. Mm-hmm. So you're 1/3 of the book within like, zack. That's the actual fantastic thing. But also, I believe it become very complex in the end of writing, because then we continuously like, have I written about it? Did Andi wrote about it? Did Hilliary mention it? Or maybe Hilliary should mention it, and then it's become very complicated. So in the end, it's a very, very demanding job of jumping back and forth and double check and triple check if you not maybe accidentally talk about it somewhere else. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did have to consolidate duplicates or string things in that concepts that somebody introduced in one chapter that didn't really exist anywhere else, just so that it didn't come out of complete left field. There were a few of those, and yeah, that was the hard part, especially because first chapters. I mean, we didn't write them in order. I think that's really the important thing. We did not write these in order. So it ended up being a cohesive book, and that was really. That was really the latter half of the writing adventure. But I think we got the whole thing done in under a year, which really was just us being up, awake, talking to each other at really strange hours. Like it'd be 1 a.m. my time, and I'm firing messages back and forth, and then it's 1 a.m. Max's time, and he's firing messages back and forth, and there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we even did it. I mean, if you just look at the writing, we did it in under 6 months. Right, because we got together in March in Paris, and we had the final drop-off date in August.
I think even less, because until May we didn't start or so.
Yeah.
April. Well, that was like the second week of April. Yeah.
Hey, let me ask a related question here, right? Because obviously you're all making it sound a lot easier than it sounds in my mind, but we might have listeners who have ideas. I mean, I always panic before I start anything. But if we have listeners who are thinking about writing a book, right? Obviously you can write a book, but you have to get somebody to publish it and get stuff like that done. So whoever got that ball rolling, can you just give a quick description? Like if someone's curious, like what are some first steps they should do to reach out to see if it would be topic somebody want to publish or support or anything like that?
Oh, that's all, Max. Go for it.
It's actually easier than you might think. So the publishers are continuously looking for topics they can support a book and its creation. Some, like we wrote it with PACT, and PACT is like continuously reaching out to people who they believe are subject matter experts. They also have like I believe it's a Discord channel or whatsoever, where you can go in and they throw ideas into the room like, hey, we have done the research. What about topic XYZ? And then they're looking for it. So this is one part of the story. And then, I mean, if you're convinced that your idea is good, you can reach out to any publisher who might fit your field. Right?
Okay.
You should do your research a little bit. If you have more, I don't want to say fictional books, because there are like books like The Phoenix Project and whatsoever, which have great ideas in it, but it's not like 500 pages of code written down.
Right.
Then maybe something like an O'Reilly or PACT or whatever is maybe the wrong publisher, and you could go with something else. But also here, it's very much depends on the field.
Yeah.
I think
So
you
really just
all the time can find something.
look at the books that are similar and see who the publishers are and reach out. And there's a good chance they're looking for good topics. And if you can bring something to them, you might get lucky.
Yeah,
right?
and if you want to be successful, find out which publisher has written already a book about it and who not.
Yeah.
And tackle the publisher who haven't.
Perfect. And I see it's even available on Amazon. I see 5 reviews. One's by Andy, the other one is by Andreas, another one by Can't now. It's all 5-star reviews though. And we'll have a link to the book, obviously, for listeners if you want to get a copy. But remind them again, I know we mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you wanted to get a signed copy, where will that be happening?
The signed copy will be given out at KubeCon. That's one opportunity in London. And I'm pretty sure throughout the year there will be other conferences and other opportunities where the 3 of us will present or will be present. And then there will be opportunities to get a copy or a sign, at least a signature on a purchase copy. Both ways are good. And then Max and I mean, by the time this airs, we will have just finished our little tour through the DACH region. We will be in Vienna and in Munich the next 2 weeks, also giving out some books.
So I had to drink about 5 sampler beers to get my signed copy from Andy. So it's a very pleasurable experience. Anyhow,
The real trick is getting all 3 signatures and collecting those like Pokemon, right?
Yeah, that's actually. I'm gonna have to travel to London.
Yeah, we're gonna have to London. So for the last KubeCon in North America, where Dinah Trace also generously sponsored a book signing, I actually mailed Andy labels with my signature, one for every book.
So just stick it in there.
So yeah, so he lovingly applied my little label on all of them. But he doesn't have a bunch of spares sitting around. So if you're not at a KubeCon, you're gonna have to find me in the wild, I guess.
I'm gonna have to bring a guitar pick guard, and then I'll sell a guitar with your signatures on them.
There you go.
Anyhow, any final thoughts before we wrap up here? I do have a cutoff, but Andy, anybody?
No, I'm just happy that this worked out, and also thanks for taking the time to come on our podcast today.
Yep.
And I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it, and really appreciate everything you've done for the community. Thanks, everybody. Until next episode. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.